can edit that in.
Warning, the Catholic Man Show contains high levels of manliness. It's simple, really. You either want to grow in virtue and holiness, or you want to be a sissy, whiny baby. If you choose to move forward, grab your whiskey glass, because the Catholic Man Show is starting right now.
Welcome to the Catholic Man Show. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. Johnny come lately.
I did it.
You did it.
For the gospel, so you can still receive it.
Adam Minahan here, sitting with David Niles. We are welcoming again a guest from last week, Father Bonaventure Chapman.
I'm back.
It's great to have you back. We actually recorded back to back, so
that's why
kind of like
Dave's wearing the same shirt.
He's still here. So are you, Father?
Yeah. That's correct. I was gonna say you don't know that, but I am.
So last week we talked about Blessed John Duns Scotus. If you did not get a chance to listen to that,
Duns. I thought you said Dun.
Duns.
Okay, sorry. You know what?
Scotus.
I think the Dun Scotus, it all runs together. That's why I think it's
Maybe
Dun
so.
Scotus.
Maybe so.
Sorry, my bad.
God,
Hey,
gone done did it.
my bad, bro.
No problem.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go check that out. That was a really great conversation. We figured out that the intellect and the will, which one comes first, which comes second, which one dominates. We didn't do it. We didn't figure any of that out, but we talked about it.
We closed in on it.
We closed
a
in.
lot of stuff is just closing in and removing vi negativa. You know, it's like 20
You know what?
questions.
That's
like,
right.
Get rid of this stuff. You're closing in on it. If you knew it, to actually know it would be, I suppose, God, but any of this kind of stuff. But so as humans, we just kind of get pretty close to the what, more or less. You're kind of just pairing off the bad things.
Mhm.
So
Someday.
yeah.
Someday we'll know.
And at the end of last episode,
You can't hope.
Dare we?
Dare.
Yeah. Bad translation of that title, by the way.
Let's
That's not
talk.
what it says. It doesn't say dare we hope. It says may we. It's a Durfin, so it has a. It's been translated in American as just like kind of dare we. English comes off in that translation, Balthasar's book, as more aggressive, kind of like challenging,
Like getting
But
into
it's-
the breach, almost like.
yeah, exactly, like dare we hope. It has this kind of forward, but it's in German. It's more of a kind of may we, is it possible? Like it's hesitant, kind of just wondering. So it doesn't have the kind of, but you know, when you want to sell books and this kind of thing. So that you could say that like the misunderstanding of Balthasar's position is almost entirely due to a bad translation of the title that people don't pay attention to. Different topic though.
Does he say yes, though?
He says, may we hope, we may hope. Yeah.
He says maybe we can.
Yeah. It's
Seems-
which is the Catholic
I mean,
position.
may we hope?
But
for...
dare we hope? It sounds like, ought we to hope.
But
Wait,
can't we?
wait,
We can hope
Yeah, it's like,
for each person individually.
Yeah.
but not
but
as a whole.
I don't think that there's a hope that there will be nobody in hell.
Hell is empty.
Well, if I hope for each individual person, so if each individual can be saved,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they can.
then
be.
we just do an aggregate. Isn't this just an aggregate solution here?
Yeah,
So I'm not.
Yeah, but just because you hope doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Oh
Right.
my gosh, that's why it's
Right.
exactly
Right.
Like,
I mean, I can hope that
in
there's
fact,
purple
you might
cows.
even think like, it's really unlikely. You might think almost certainly unlikely. So is it possible that a 747 collapses on us right now? Yeah, I suppose so. It falls, but like it being possible doesn't mean anything about being probable or like likely and this kind of thing. In fact, you might think I'm not even worried until you're not worried until I mentioned the 747 might fall in this house right now, right?
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, but it might, but it's
you're
so you might think the same thing. Like, is it? Yeah, but pretty unlikely. Blah,
Also,
blah.
it seems like Judas, he's definitely in hell. It seems like he's definitely there, and I know I'm using different varieties of words there.
Yeah, Well, the trick is I think the hardest not.
I know the church doesn't say that,
not so much.
but you know
Judas.
what? I kind of do.
Yeah, not so much.
Once again, qualifying it.
I think Satan's the toughest one. And in that argument, Balthasar, to run his argument, he has to turn Satan into like an unperson.
So he says there's no angels, there's no demons in hell?
Well, if everyone saves universal salvation, then perhaps, right? You dare we hope? Why not?
But don't we know he's in hell?
Well,
isn't that like an official teaching of the church?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this is. I think the answer is yes. But I want to. He has a slippery way of dealing with this because Balthazar's not.
I don't like slippery things.
It's something like he's not a person. He's an unperson. He's ended himself, but he's not annihilated. That's
not.
Anyways, it's But I just to say, Balthazar is not a universalist in the way that people conceive him as being a universalist. But we could do that if we want.
No, yeah, it's fine.
No.
I don't.
Karl Barth was a universalist. So his Protestant guy who I lived with a professor who studied under him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he said, Karl Barth, when I asked him about it, said, I do not teach universalism, but I don't not teach it. And if you're a Calvinist and you have the position he has, then it's determinative because there's no freedom of the will in Calvinism. It's like Thomism. And then but for like Catholic freedom of the will, then you don't have determinate universalism unless you're silly about it.
How do you reconcile, though, Jesus saying that it would have been better for Judas not to have been born?
Or that the way is wide and many find it, and that
few
find it.
Hold on.
Very few people believe in the Massive Damnata doctrine is like, now we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Like, holy smokes. I mean, remember, like Thomas Aquinas describes this too, and things like, the majority of people say you, eternal damnation, the glory of God,
Right.
Like, and all fine. But that's a different. Massive Damnata is different. Yeah, the Massive Damnata theory of like how many, more likely, this kind of thing. That's tough, man, because Jesus says it.
Right.
He is the Lord.
Yeah, and I think he knows. He probably knows.
You could say it's. I mean, this is where speech act theory comes in. This sort of stuff. So he's blah blah blah. We could tell a story about this. But this one, yours is the better. Yeah, yours is not better. You're great.
But
well,
like, it's
I brought it up.
specific
That's what I
question.
was saying. It's like it seems like he's definitely in hell because.
Well, you could
Christ
say it's better.
says.
It's better that he wasn't born. This you could say, well, if you really wanted, if you had presupposed that it's possible that he is saved at some point, then you could tell a story about how to make that intelligible, and that it would
it
be
seems
better.
like gymnastics.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't think I would believe that story.
Yeah. It's not a good one to tell the kids. I wouldn't tell it.
Right.
Go for it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. I'm not here to defend universalism. No desire to defend universalism.
It's actually not even what we're going to talk about today.
What about?
I just like Balthazar, and I think he gets a bad rap sometimes. So I'm always trying to help out a little bit if I can.
The only thing I know about him,
which is a tie-in segue, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
is the whole hell thing.
And Ronald Reagan, his speech on his eulogy on Balthazar.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know this?
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
So Ronald Reagan gave the eulogy of Hans von Balthazar to the French Academy.
He did?
Yeah, because
What, did he know the guy or something?
No, there's a tradition.
Because I know Reagan's German was not always very precise.
Our buddy Lackey just told me something about this, and I don't know what.
Oh, it's brilliant! It's a great. So this, I love this. So when you're put in the French Academy, there's a certain number of chairs, and you're an immortal, as you're known. And so when you take your chair in the French Academy, you have to eulogize the man's chair you got. So just kind of random, you say. So in 88, when Balthazar died, chair opened up, given to Reagan. So Reagan has to give a speech eulogizing Hans von Balthazar. It is, I mean, it's good because it's clearly a man. Now Reagan, obviously didn't write this speech. I've been trying to figure who did. I asked Robert Novick was with us next to the house at some point, who was a speechwriter for him. Michael Novak, Robert Nozick's another person, Michael Novak. And I asked him because I figured it must be because it's someone who kind of knows a little bit about this stuff, and you wouldn't ask any random Catholic. And he was a Catholic speechwriter, Michael Novak. And I said, "Did you write that speech?" And he said, "No, I didn't." And I said, "Who wrote it then?" He said, "I don't know who wrote it." So it's maybe someone can find this out, but it's tremendous because he says he comes right front like I not know anything about Father von Balthazar until today, until this giving this
I didn't
speech.
know this man existed until 3 hours ago.
He would probably agree with me on X, and then X, Y, and Z, and a number of X, Y is good, but Z he like totally misunderstands. Whoever wrote this totally misunderstands Balthazar's conception of technology, and Balthazar is like a Heideggerian. He believes that technology views the world in a particular way that takes away damages it and hurts our understanding of and appropriation of humanity. And this thing has, like, Balzer would agree with me that technology is like the greatest thing, and we're pushing out further and further into space. And it's like there is no, I mean, but it is really quaint and delightful, and even the idea. I mean, the fact it's kind of like a Christopher Nolan movie. You get A's as far as I'm 4 stars no matter what, because he's going for the biggest ideas. He's dealing with time, space, causality, and stuff. So like A+. Now let's talk about where you missed out on some of these things here, because so Reagan even giving a talk on von Balzer, it's like, all right, that's great, love it, fantastic. Now look at this bizarre contradiction. Yeah, but it's great. You can find. It's hard to find online, but you can find it out there. And once you find it, you should save it as a PDF. Because it is delightful.
Nice.
This is cool, like incidents, of like people relating across spheres. Like when was it AJ Ayer defended Tyra Banks against Mike Tyson in a kitchen in England at a party.
Okay.
Yeah. Really cool. Really cool.
Did not know this.
So you just got to collect these kind of stories when you have like people.
You mean like physically defended?
Yeah. So AJ Ayer
against Mike Tyson.
Yeah, AJ Ayer was some.
And Mike Tyson wanted
Mike Tyson
to beat up Tyra Banks.
No, didn't want to beat her up. He wanted to befriend her, and was befriending her in a particular way.
I see.
And so Ayer comes and like kind of separates him for a second in the kitchen, and she gets away, and he calms him down in a particular way, and she's escaping at this time, so he's good to go.
Did not know that story.
I didn't either. But we're gonna talk about art today.
And other things.
And we'll see wherever.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't
God,
know.
and that's it.
We're gonna talk about Jesus.
I love Jesus.
Big fan. Did you ever watch The Office?
American or Brit?
American.
Oh, many times.
So
season 1 through 3 is spectacular.
I agree.
After that, it's really downhill.
Four's okay.
It's doable, but only because of 1 through 3.
Right, exactly. And then afterwards, yeah,
unwatchable.
But Pam's boyfriend, whenever he goes and sees her art, he's like, "Your art is the best art of all the art."
That is the art show. That's great. yeah, I do love that.
She's like, just giving him that look of
Yeah.
like, you are the worst.
Yeah, your art's the best.
I physically loathe you right now.
Some old lady walks up and sees her art, and she's like, "It's impressionist art." And she's like,
I like to think I'm in this school.
Yeah, and she's like, "Well, maybe someday."
Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot about that. Maybe someday.
Okay.
So we're gonna talk about art.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want you're gonna have to lead the way because
Yeah. I'm just gonna ask you guys about art.
all I have are very narrow art
I like
opinions.
Caravaggio.
Oh yeah.
Big fan of Caravaggio.
Yeah.
Do you know all of the 3 Matthews? His Matthew triptych is in one church in Rome and just a little side chapel.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's one right there. There's a Caravaggio.
But that's not Matthew. That's Ecce Homo.
Homo.
Yeah.
Behold.
Yep. He's Caravaggio is spectacular.
Yeah.
Yep. Really
I have a
spectacular. He's one of
large, the calling of Saint Matthew.
the best. That's incredible.
In my living room.
It's dark. The problem is it's like
It is dark.
yeah, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
But that's what he's known for.
Caravaggio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like just physically, yeah.
Hey, did you know that he is very much colorblind?
Caravaggio?
No, Father.
Oh, you are.
We'll talk about it on the show.
Yeah. But I mean, his you've seen his Our Lady of the Rosary. I think Caravaggio's Our Lady of the Rosary is the best of them, which is fantastic. Yeah. He just gets there's just a lot to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay. You hit the wrong button.
I did. Hang on. Hang on some more.
Is this live?
No.
But does this get taped like this part? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Gives some sneak peeks and behind the scenes.
I like that.
Yeah.
And stuff. We don't have green room and stuff. It's a shame. Because ours is too produced in that way. You know.
We're pretty raw.
Ours
I like it.
It's not.
No, it's better. It's Aufhebung. It's Hegelian. Like it's better than. It's not garbage. It's not produced. It's better than both.
Nice. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles here with Adam and our special guest today is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
That's me.
Boom.
So we talked about some random things already.
Yeah. Not
Some
entirely random.
interesting interesting.
Actually, you can kind of pull them all together.
You can.
All things, I suppose, in Christ. But we were going to talk about art.
Yeah. Well, I could tie him if you want.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's tie it up.
Adam was talking about this as well.
Yes.
So, if people, your listeners, viewers, drawers, might be attentive to Bishop Barron. They've probably heard of him before. And Bishop Barron's big on beauty and arts. And he's from that somewhat, you could say, from Balthazar, we talked about earlier, because Balthazar, Lake Como, there it is. Okay.
You know that.
Sorry,
that was great.
Squirrel.
Yeah, squirrel. But Lake Como was awesome.
Yeah.
Like his letters at Lake Como.
It's just Heidegger. Yeah,
and you mean the letters too? I mean, I'm sure the lake is nice too.
Yeah, but I'm talking about actually the letters.
Yeah, it's more important than the actual lake because it's human as opposed to just nature. That's what art's about. It's human, not nature. But Balthazar has this interesting reflection. He has a trilogy on what are traditionally known as the transcendentals. These kind of things that cut across all categories, which are the true, the good, and the beautiful. Thomas will be like, beautiful, which is not really transcendental, but let's just bracket for now. And it's because Kant, Immanuel Kant, the great philosopher, he wrote 3 critiques, 3 big books on philosophy. First one is Critique of Pure Reason, which is on judgment and truth, you could say. Second one is on critique of practical reasons, of morals, of the good. And then the third one is the critique of aesthetic judgment and nature. So it's kind of about beautiful. And he goes truth, goodness, and beauty. And Balthazar's trilogy, 16 volumes, switches it. And so he does the theo-aesthetic, glory of the Lord, Herrlichkeit. So that's 7 volumes on beauty.
Every German word sounds so mean.
It's a beautiful language because nothing says "I love you" like "Ich liebe dich."
Ich liebe dich.
Yeah, that's right. It's really good, but it's incredibly precise. It's
you could say "Ich lieben Sie" if you wanted to be more formal.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be loving that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not like British love, okay? Although like German love is kind
of
stabbing, right?
I love you, dearest mother.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So the 7 volumes of the theo-aesthetic, so theological aesthetics, beauty, and then 5 volumes of a theological drama, theodrama, so goodness, and then theologic, 3 volumes on truth, you could say. And then the last one is an epilogue, just in case you missed it. He put another thing in there. So that's 16 total. It's a beautiful thing. And Barron takes this as an important element. You can combine this. So he takes Balthazar's kind of in today's, not like necessarily as aesthetics has to lead, although I think Balthazar has a claim about priority there, but in the evangelical sense that truth people are just not that interested in today. It's hard sell on that right off the bat. Goodness is controverted because of utilitarianism and different conceptions of morality and stuff, but you can kind of catch people off guard with beauty. That there's something about beauty that people just kind of have to agree about, and that beauty at least is an aspect in leading to the faith, and so art becomes then a vehicle for evangelization. Dostoevsky says that beauty can save the world. I forget what his modal.
Yeah.
Claim is there.
I am so sorry. I did not realize.
Was it in the future? Beauty will save the world.
I'm trying to remember. It's like beauty. Yeah, it's a modal term. Is it beauty can or beauty will or beauty can?
I think it's. I thought it was beauty will save the world.
Beauty will save the world. Yeah, and who knows if that in Russian if that's like, necessarily will.
My Russian is poor. I'll tell you.
Most Russians are. Okay. So anyway, so Balthazar kind of brought, at least in the theological thing, a sense of aesthetics and beauty, and then Barron takes this up, and so you see this in some circles and about that beauty is a way of evangelizing, and then you can tie it with, in the sense that the Catholic Church especially, has always been really attentive to art and to beauty as a vehicle of knowing the divine and knowing us. The Vatican cares a lot about art. Has a big art museum in there, of course, some beautiful masterpieces. Why? For money? No, because it's a shepherd of the arts. Francis just a couple days ago read something someone else wrote a short letter to artists on the 50th year celebration of the Vatican's modern art collection. It's a 3-page little address. It's actually very nice. He wrote one on Pascal a few days ago, which was very nice as well. June 19th, I should say.
That threw a lot of people off, writing a letter on Pascal.
Yeah, he gave that speech, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't...
I guess gave it, but...
Yeah.
when that came out, it was like
it's really good.
People were very like it bridged a lot of gaps for people. Actually,
it's really good.
Yeah.
It reminded me. I mean, I like Pascal a lot. But I mean, I saw things in there in Pascal I'd forgotten about, that he'd said things like, "This is fantastic," and he didn't say the thing most people say. Pascal's kind of a heart has reasons that reason doesn't know about, will and love, this kind of thing. He doesn't use that one. You'd think that'd be an easy Franciscan kind of sell, in both sense of the terms. He uses other ones that are just brilliant. So anyway, that's and he quotes from Jean-Luc Marion's newest book on metaphysics, produced in French in 2023, just a month or two ago. I looked at that and I thought, there's just no way Pope Francis is reading Jean-Luc Marion's newest book on metaphysics in French that just came out like a month ago. But I could be told. I don't know.
I feel like if you want to write a book and make sure that it sells as few copies as possible, you choose the topic of metaphysics.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know that's a big section of Barnes & Noble, man, but do not get those books because they mean something very different by metaphysics. I wish it involved power crystals.
It's like you're publishing to a very narrow audience there. But anyway.
Yeah, but but back to art though. So both are leading to art, and the fact that there's something too. We might reflect on like the value of art, whether it can save the world, and we're going to use beauty and art kind of interchangeably. Although I think there's a significant point to make about the two. But that there's something about art that's distinctively human, and distinctly important. And that if we miss out on it, we're missing out on not only opportunities to know God, but to know who we are. And knowledge of self, of course, is related to knowledge of God in terms of knowing yourself, knowing God, knowing yourself as being poor and wretched and sinful, but in the image of God, yet requiring, demanding something else in a sense, and then knowing God is kind of responding to that. So I think that's what strikes me in the Balthasarian key, is that there is something about this claim that art is important, that beauty is important, and therefore art is to be important. At the same time, I live in Washington, D.C., and they have beautiful free galleries there. And the one gallery is just like this ring. It's called the Hirschhorn Gallery, and it is a modern art gallery, or a contemporary art gallery, if we make that distinction. And you're just wandering around that thing, and I think, we could just set this on fire and nothing would be lost. Nothing. Like, I remember looking, there was a lit up wall thing. It was a neon sign that said 4 colors, and get this,
it was
each
4
one
color.
Yeah, and I looked at that wall and I thought, priceless. Just priceless.
What a genius.
Yeah, and then you see, there's a bunch of broken boxes on the floor. I'm thinking, what's going on? Oh my, there's a sign on them. And it doesn't say like being moved. It says like
do not touch.
It's do not touch the the struggle of humanity in the face of the oppressions. Whatever. So like it's holding. I think it says we have this kind of experience.
That's
of like,
not art.
Right.
You can't call it art. All it is, and so I want you to define modern art because
or art in general.
Before I start hating on. And just dumping my wrath on a whole section of things, I want to make sure it's appropriately dumped.
Yeah.
So maybe, what's art? What's modern art? Where is it that I can dump this load of wrath?
That's good. Yeah, exactly. You got to do it. I mean, you got to do it.
I've got it just back here.
Yeah. I think everyone kind of does. And I feel it's really important to distinguish. And
it's like,
general.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah,
that's sorry. Too soon.
You're
sorry. I just
no. It's visceral. But this is the important part about. I mean, art does bring up these kind of passions, but in an intellectual frame. It's not. I don't feel like I'm just emoting. I feel like I have a reason to be this angry.
Yeah.
So it's this nice. Which brings us to what is art? I mean, art is the fusion. I would say, for just a rough calculation here.
Okay.
Art is something like the fusion of form and matter, as made, right? So art has this. So when we talk about art, there's something about the material, the medium of art, and then there's something about what's in it, what it's doing, what it is, this kind of
conveying.
Conveying. Now, let's break this for a second. How does it do this? So there's two kinds of, you could say, schools generally. How do I pick out what is art about? And the traditional one is called representation. So art and kind of is imitation. So art imitates nature, right? Like a good piece of art for a long period of time. Realism. A good sense of, So a good sense of art is that it's responding to, it's trying to copy in some ways nature. Art imitates nature. When we do good art, we're trying to basically kind of follow what the world's up to, to represent the world appropriately.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting that actually I think technology helped us to see that this can't just be right. This can't be all of it, and maybe not even the most important part of it, although it's necessary in a way. Is that while there is a representational aspect to it, there are these things that were invented at some point in the 1860s, I think it is, something called cameras.
The photography.
And that was a sort of game changer. It forced us to realize and ask questions about what really is art. So maybe that's a good transition.
Cool. Okay, we're here with Father Bonaventure Chapman, Dominican House of Studies, and one of the co-hosts of Godsplaining. Go check that podcast out. We'll be right back. Is this 2 or 3? 3. Okay.
So much tech is amazing. Gosplayers like dribble wheels and a bunch of wood blocks.
You guys are pedaling in the back to keep everything going.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. Okay, so we're talking about art, and we were in the process of cameras came on the scene, which really made us take a step back to understand what is, art.
This made us question what we think. Because sometimes you think it's a bit like, when you understand of anything philosophically, it's not like you're seeing new things out there. You're seeing things newly. Like, so a good philosopher and this is what we're, as humans, we're able to grasp the invisible in the visible and make distinctions that don't appear immediately. It's like, you can distinguish it between your soul and your body, even though I can't see your soul, because you're making a distinction, an important distinction, grasping something there. And in the same way with art, we're trying to figure out what is this phenomenon of art? Like, there's just something about art. People do it. People paint. People do all sorts. There's something there. Well, what is it doing? What is it? It's like, what is a body? What is a human? And we thought for a while, at least, it seemed like representationalism was the big aspect, realism, but
as close to a real picture as
close
possible.
As close to, exactly. So we're close to a reality as possible. It's like we're just depicting reality. It's our version. Like, God did this. He made that kind of thing. And I'm going to try to copy him a bit as best I can in two-dimensional space.
Da Vinci,
or something.
Michelangelo, you see him doing this.
Exactly. And so art, a good art, is related to how well it represents, and art is about representation. But then cameras came out, and it didn't replace it, because cameras represent extremely well. In fact, like, basically perfectly.
Right.
Much better. A camera is a much better picture of any situation, you could say, at least in this representational way, from that. And so you'd think, well, once we got cameras, we don't have to have portraits anymore, we don't have to have paintings, this kind of stuff, we're good to go. But no one thought that was... And the minute you hear it, you're like, no, a photo is different than a painting. And you say, well, why? And it moved to, since actually when we're not just representing, we're also expressing something, right? That art is not just a communication of information pointing to something out there, but rather a communication of a thought to us, the viewer. It's a conversation piece. It turns out that art is a conversation piece from the artist to the audience, the spectator. To him first. He's the first spectator in a sense. Like, when I'm preaching to myself and the audience, and I'm related to that. And the artist doing that. So that instead of just representation, you have a sense that actually what art is doing, if it's art, is expressing something. Now, what is it expressing? This opens it up to say, well, is it just emotion? Is it something else? And this is where it all of a sudden, as you get away from representationalism, you have it's nice and clear. So, like, It just has to represent this. So, if we're painting a mountain, we paint a mountain. If we're painting a squirrel, we paint a squirrel. Rabbit, whatever. Painting Lepanto, we paint Lepanto. Sort of thing I can tie. But once you say, well, wait a minute, the pictures do that, but that doesn't seem like it replaces art. Art is supposed to not just point to that thing, but actually point to me and tell me something about that thing from the artist's perspective. He's, in a sense, not just a reproducer, but a creator of meaning.
He's crafting this.
He's crafting something to say something. So art says something by showing something, right? And then you say, whoa, well, what are the boundaries of that painting or that art that the medium does to be able to say something? And so that's when you start, once people realize that, wait a minute, art is not just doing representationalism. It's about saying something, expressing something. Then it starts to, well, let's experiment with this sort of thing and find out how far can we push the boundary, like what, So this is where you start to get more modern art things, right? And this is where we're all, because I think we all have the sense that art is supposed to be representationalism, we get to a little bit antsy about this kind of, what in the world is four colors representing? In some ways it's representing just four colors, right? So it's actually super realist. It just says nothing to me. It says nothing to me. And that's why, so it's not bad art, and because it's doesn't look like a bird or whatever.
No.
It looks like what it ought to look like. Neon sign, four colors. You can say, what are you trying to make it look like? That. Well, it does do that really well. But what is it trying to say? What is it trying to tell me? It could be that I'm just a Neanderthal knuckle dragger, and I have missed out on this sort of important expression it's doing. That's possible. Or it could just be...
That's not it.
It could just be a garbled... What I think is, if it's communication, right, it takes skill and ability to not only have an intention to communicate, but actually be able to communicate that well. And whatever he had in mind when he was making that thing, he did not do it well because his intention of his message is unfulfilled in my audience.
This is what I think is the problem with a lot of the art today, is that what you were saying is that the art is supposed to convey a message. And modern art conveys the very absence of a message. Okay, when you have a blank canvas.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, and that's your art. Or when you have these boxes that says, "Oh, the oppression," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
What the artist is doing is just becoming a marketer and presenting something sort of like what fortune tellers do. They're going to give you something and expect that your own cause is going to fill in their own inabilities, okay? Like, I don't actually have a good message to give you, but I'm going to give you the illusion of a message, knowing that you are going to fill in what I can't do. Okay, so when you look at the boxes, whatever, junk, and he's like, oh, yeah, the oppression, because... I have whatever. I'm oppressed.
These corners are being broken around,
right?
And it's not about tight edges. It's about the flexibility of things.
Right.
That have been damaged by the oppression.
And so now, me as the viewer, I'm the one actually doing the job for the artist, and they're not actually telling me anything. So there's nothing even to evaluate. There's a lack of a message, not where there should be a message.
Well, in that sense, this is where. And it's very, very few actual artists and modern artists particularly will say that people say, oh, it doesn't matter. You bring the meaning to it. And if you read artists and account their own paintings, none of them say, very few of them say, oh, it doesn't matter what you mean. No, it's like a letter. I have a purpose. I have an intention in this thing. And in that case, as you're saying with the boxes, in a lot of modern art, you're expected to be the actual artist. In the sense, he or she has presented you with the medium, these crappy boxes or whatever, and you're supposed to develop the meaning, but that's you doing the art. Real good art is you discovering not what that thing represents, but what that thing says. You're supposed to discover, there's a point to this, that it says he's making a point, and it should be, if it's good art, it should be a profound point about truth and goodness. So that art is a way of making or showing what otherwise we would either do or say. So art represents or points to, expresses through its representations truths that we would either do or say or think. And it's an embodied sense of that, which I think is why, when done well, what's also dangerous, you got to be careful. When done well, it gets to us in ways that words on pages or certain images don't get to us.
Sure.
Because it's, in sense, art is fitted to our human nature. What do I mean by that? I mean that we are, unlike anything else in the universe, as far as I can tell, rational souls embodied. Angels are rational spirits. God is pure spirit. Animals are forming their souls and bodies, but their soul doesn't last for. It's not an eternal soul. It's not grasping.
rational.
They're not rational. It's not. It doesn't. They're not communicating thoughts and deep desire. We're the only things that have the ability to communicate and choose, love, to know and to love, but we do it through our bodies. Like that's let's just leave the afterlife out of this for a moment. Or at least the before the resurrection kind of thing.
We'll leave aliens out too.
We'll leave those out too.
Yeah.
Don't worry about those. Do not be scared of them. They are not around. But we do this. This is part of JP2's kind of language of the body stuff, which is just a fancy way of saying that we're Aristotelians and we believe in hylomorphism, form and matter, and that we're bodies and souls, and we're not bodies with souls, or souls with bodies carrying around, but we're a unified embodied thing. And our meaning, comes always in a sense comes with a vehicle of matter.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I'm speaking, like we do think that words are just kind of like thoughts. No, it's words they have sonic quality. You're hearing me, but you can't hear me unless I'm also making some noises. But those noises are just the medium for the message, the understanding of what that means. And just
Right.
like if you've heard other languages you don't know, you're hearing the same thing as that other guy is, but why don't you understand it?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't interpret it. And so it's I think because communication is this form and matter thing, our sight is the same way. Art has this ability, and it's the most human, I would say, vehicle to get at transcendence or meaning or the deeper questions because it's embodied in this way. So and when art is done well, it's actually saying true things about the world and about ourselves. And what I think annoys us so much to the point of apoplectic hatred, as Dave you have here.
Yeah.
Is
that's correct.
It ought to do so well. It's like you should be able to say beautiful things, and I don't even know what you're telling me.
I literally see things, and I want to look to the artist and say, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
Like
Do you feel like
I would
that
be
with
so embarrassed if I were you. But
do you feel like that with abstract art?
oh yes, absolutely. Abstract art is just a whole pile of crap.
Now, what do you mean? Now, what do you mean by abstract art?
Abstract artists are people who wish they were good at painting and aren't, and so the only thing they can do is make up random things on and like try to ascribe meaning to something that has no meaning and pretend to be profound.
I'll talk about this in a minute.
Prove me wrong.
We'll be right back. I had a feeling by opening that can that would
Yeah, I mean,
because
I'm happy.
obviously knew where you stood on that.
yeah.
It helps when those artists get a $20,000 check for that.
Yeah. Well, you know who they're not getting a $20,000 check from? This guy.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay, so are you going to defend it?
Sure.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
I like that
got
idea.
to. Yeah.
All right,
got to.
you ready?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Let's do it.
I'm now in the peanut gallery. I did my part. Now I'm just gonna sit back. And I threw the grenade, and
You're
now
just stupid like your father.
My father was a brilliant man.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles. We're talking about art. I don't know if I made it clear where I stand right before the last break on
Abstract art.
so-called
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
so Father, you're going to do your best
Yeah, I'll do my best.
to give a defense of abstract art.
Sure.
Now, also, we still have not defined modern art. I mean, is that just simply art that's being made today?
Well, it depends.
Because there's the modern
think that's
era,
contemporary.
which is
Yeah.
actually not now.
Right. I think generally people, when they think of modern art, there's usually different modern art and contemporary art. And contemporary art is the kind of 20th century kind of stuff. Modern art is, a little bit before that. Maybe it starts with Picasso or something, or Cezanne. So we're moving very far from this representationalism to kind of pure expressionism. And then modern art we tend to think of as you say, abstract art, and use those together. I think it's a semantic issue. It depends what people say. I mean, we do basically. I've never been to a museum of abstract art, like the Museum of Abstract Art in New York. No, it's the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, or something, or like that. So we tend to think of modern art as distinct from, in historical periods, the kind of classical representational art. But of course, any demarcation is always tricky. It's like the Middle Ages and modernity. Where the boundaries are always tricky, right? When does the Middle Ages start? Is it Augustine in 400? Or is it Boethius? Or is it, Anselm in 1100? Like, that's 600 years difference.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Right.
When does it stop? When do the Middle Ages stop? Is it stop with, William of Ockham or John Buridan, 1400s, 1500s? Luther, is he a medieval? Is Descartes actually a medieval? Or was he the first modern? Or is he the last medieval?
Right,
Or is he
yeah.
both? And so modern art, classical art, but I think we don't need to have a specific definition about a term that doesn't have a definition. We can just
Okay, so by modern art, what you're talking about?
contemporary art. We can talk
Art
about,
being made relatively recently.
100 years ago. What basically, focal cases are nice. You might think of a Jackson Pollock. People might be familiar with Jackson Pollock, just the paint spread on there. Andy Warhol, for instance, might be a case of this. Soup cans. You might think of Franz Klein as my favorite modern artist. A lot of strong black painted, simple against white backgrounds. Clifford Still, they might be familiar with him. Or Mark Rothko might be really familiar. So these kind of big canvases. There's a chapel in Houston I went to, Mark Rothko Chapel. And it's just this room that has these really dark colored, because it's always tricky exactly what color it is I'm looking at, but really, really dark walls of his painting, so everyone kind of can have a picture of his painting. Let's say that's modern art, abstract art, whatever.
So before we continue, I want to clarify my hatred.
Got it.
It's for stupid art.
Oh, that is hateable.
Not for I don't care what
stupid art is so
I don't
hateable.
hate art from a time period. I hate stupid art.
Yeah. It just turns out a lot of stupid art's produced today.
There's a lot more now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because back in the day, they were shooting for something beautiful, and now they're shooting for something bizarre.
I don't know, man. You look at still life sometimes, I think, like, just a bunch of pears on a table. Well done. Like, things that can be replaced with photography, for instance, you might think is actually also stupid art.
Well, but the thing
but
about
that's a training exercise.
The thing about it is that there was still a master, like a craftsmanship to it. That.
Yeah, but that's not art.
Well,
that's craftsmanship.
Once the camera was invented, it did kind of. What's the value in this still art? Right, it's just a picture of pears, or what you can take a picture of it now.
We'll put it this way. Let's skip back for a second. So portraits. Right, so you might think a picture has replaced portraiture, but anyone I care a lot about. So John Singer Sargent is one of my favorite artists, a great American painter, and great gigantic portraits of various and sundry people, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And you might think, oh, his, and there were pictures around when he was doing it. But why care about him, and why look at his portraits? And you ought to, because a picture just gets surface details. Right, a portrait is able to say something almost three-dimensional. It's a great one of my favorite philosopher of art is Richard Volheim. He was a 20th century figure, and he talked about when we look at pictures, the phenomenology. What are we doing? And he says it's a problem of seeing in something, seeing in.
Right.
And when we look at portraits, pictures we just look at. We see that as that.
Yeah, a picture, that's the way it is. With a portrait, that's the way I wanted it to be.
Not just that. No, actually, I think that's the way. Picture is that's the way it is, and the portrait is that's the way it really is. So with a picture of a person, you just get, you get kind of it's something flat about it. Whereas a portrait, like if you look at John Singer Sargent's portraits, when they're drawing, he's it's almost like you can see that person's, you almost know that person. There's
Yeah.
something about their soul, and just by the way he structured it, by the choices, the facial expressions, because he has chosen how to say something about that person that ideally, the point is, it should be who that person is. A good portrait of that person is the best expression of who that person is.
Right.
So expression, it's saying, if I want to know Lady Agnew, okay, is one of his famous paintings. It's in Scotland. It's absolutely gorgeous. You look at this, and it's not just a picture. I can see that this is a woman who is in royalty, but she actually didn't come from that. But you can see it in that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
that's amazing.
So that's what. So painting is, the idea is that you're not just representing this,
Yeah.
but you're expressing something. Again, it's in a sense that the form.
Every
right?
line is intentional and for
Yeah.
a reason. That's
Now, it's not, and we don't praise just the craftsmanship. It is craftsmanship to be able to do this. And Johnson & Sargent, with the palette he has, color palette, he uses a smaller palette to be able to do these things is incredible. But it's not the craftsmanship so much, because there are plenty of good craftsmen who are really good about detailed things, and they're not art. Like a great car is really well fine crafted. What a piece of art! Not really, because it's not expressing something about largely human nature or about values and truth. Now, abstract art.
yes.
This is, so in the count of, say, Pollock or Klein or Rothko. We'll stick with Rothko, because people might be familiar with him. Rothko is not painting portraitures. He's got giant, huge canvases that are just this dense, rich color. Could be orange, could be yellow. In his chapel, they're largely black or purple. Just this incredible dense thing. And you look at these, you think, what the heck is that? It doesn't look like anything.
That's exactly what I think.
Exactly. And then you'd remind yourself, didn't I just agree that art wasn't about so much representing something as expressing something? Oh, okay. Well, what is this thing trying to say? Why was he doing this? To get a paycheck? No. We do everything for some reason that. But he could have done other things for a paycheck. Maybe even made more money if he'd done that. He wanted to do this particular thing. He wanted to paint this particular way with these particular shapes, configurations. What was he trying to say? What was he trying to say? You might think, there is no way to know. We can't. But let's be skeptical. If he's a good artist, just like a good conversationalist, how do I know what you're actually saying? I know what I would mean by the words out of your mouth, but I don't know the words as you would say them. There is no way for us to communicate. No, we speak the same language, live in the same culture, there's lots of similarities, so I can interpret what you say. Your words can turn into meanings for me that I can trust that more or less we're good. And if I have questions, I can do this sort of thing. Art is a conversation as well from the medium. And what is Rothko trying to say? Well, I think it's this: if you sit in front, you have to sit with art and contemplate. Abstract art requires a little more time in a sense. You have to sit and look at it and say, what, in a sense, is happening to me? What is it trying to convey? What am I experiencing? Not in the sense of feelings, but in the sense of what is it trying to represent to me? And with Rothko, he's trying to represent the kind of deep unconscious aspect to our humanity that we're inclined to forget about in our over-rationalization. Freud does this with books, with words, and stories about neurotics on couches. And it's fine, but you have to read over a bunch of things.
Not really a big fan of him either.
Right. But Rothko, right. But you might say, let's assume there's a truth to human nature, which is such that
I do assume that.
And one of the truths about human nature is such that there are unconscious or subconscious elements that our passions slide up and have effects on our consciousness and our higher ordering function reasoning that we are not always aware of, but that we can come to realize, wow, as we've all done at some point, I was really actually saying that because of this sort of, I'm actually much more guided by these kind of unconscious things in some ways. They color a little bit how I speak. Let's assume that's the truth about human psychology.
Okay,
right?
look, can we stop here?
Yeah.
Because I'm not familiar with the picture, but I'm trying to the painting that you're referring to. I'm trying to picture it in my head.
It's about there's
just
plenty
like
of them.
a dark, and so it's like, all right, if someone were to see that, if he paints that, puts it out, never says anything, and everybody
Never. He said everything.
Okay, but how do
if it's
you
good
know?
art, he doesn't need to.
Well, yeah. how do you know that's what the painting is about?
Well, how do I know that your words are about the things you're saying?
Because
It's
there's a common acceptance.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and to me, the abstract art is like, okay, I could use words. We have these words that mean specific things, or at least,
There's a range.
a range. Okay,
Yeah.
and abstract art is me just going like, and just making noise. Okay, and maybe it means something to me, and it might make you feel something, or it might like be significant to somebody, but it doesn't actually mean anything.
Well, how can it? If it can't mean anything, you can't understand it. You can't grasp it at all.
That's how
You're surely to reject it. You got to have a judgment. You're
Because
making a judgment about it, so you got to have some grasp of meaning. On
we
it.
have rules.
Oh, jeez.
Just like music, you can't just like pound on the keyboard.
We're gonna have to talk about jazz, aren't we?
We're gonna.
We can talk about
Just
jazz.
play the right notes.
All right, we're gonna keep this conversation going. I'm really because I'm liking it.
Yeah.
On the other side of the break, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. We're on the Lord's team,
The winning side.
so raise your glass.
Was that number 4?
Yeah.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, that went fast.
That went really fast.
Okay, so
Yeah.
because I would like to appreciate this art because
Yeah.
abstract art is very
What's his name?
popular.
Mark Rothko.
But okay, we have
ROTHKO.
for all like
There you go.
all the history of the painting is very long and rich,
Mm-hmm.
and the words of the art are symbols, right? That there should be something that it represents specifically something that everybody knows that represents something. Now, maybe you can use those symbols in interesting ways, or unexpected ways.
That's
but
not even how language works, though. I mean,
Isn't it?
No, because we just talked about this. If I go to Italy and someone's blah 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 blah, I can hear him. He's got the right sounds, but I don't know what the hell he's saying.
but they do mean something.
Yeah, well, so does
They mean a
but
specific
see,
thing.
You see what I'm saying? Like with Rothko, you might say, I don't understand what you're saying here, and he's like, you haven't learned my language yet. But it doesn't mean that my language is meaningless.
Is this the one you're talking about?
Well, but that's one of them. He does plenty of these things. It's fine.
Okay.
They're all this. I mean, as you could tell, they're all basically the same thing. Giant, and these are big, giant color splotches.
Okay.
This sort of thing. And with that, I mean, again, the idea is it's supposed to express something. Oh, the black ones are black ones do more for me than others. And that's the point. Is like some people feel differently in front of these other ones. What he's trying to get at, I take it, Rothko. That's probably his most famous, that one right there.
That one?
Yeah. What I take it is, and you have to remember, this is not just a little picture here. This thing is like the
Huge.
size of this room.
Okay.
And you sit in front of it, and you, in a sense, it's weird. The experience of it is it draws out these kind of subterranean emotions, because it's a color swatch that's painted over and over and over again. So it's very rich and deep and dense, and when it's there, it's drawing out of you these kind of unconscious, bubbling up aspects. And to my mind, the aspect, what he's trying to say there, is to remind you again of the unconscious dimensions of my rationality. And that gets it, that expresses it to me in more than just, you have unconscious rationality. Right? Just like, if I wanted to paint you, I could just describe he's this tall and has this sort of thing, like in words. But it doesn't express as much as actually the picture, nor, more importantly, the portrait of you, if that's like the best way to express you, because it's embodied in this way. This is an embodied message
like
about
that?
that's Kandinsky. I don't know what he's up to.
Like, because this is
But I
like
can't just-
disorder. Like, to
Well,
me, that looks disorder. Like,
and is his, I mean,
the ones where, and what I'm talking about for the audience in audio is
Just
like
flinging
paint all over the
Jackson
canvas.
Pollock's. The Jackson Pollock could be a kind of a case where, so Jackson Pollock people might be familiar with. It just looks like paint. He paints by just throwing paint and all this sort of thing.
Right.
And you might say this is a bunch of nonsense, but then you ask him like, what are you intending to do here?
But see, you have to ask him.
Well, I have to ask anyone what they're intending
No,
to do
see,
here.
I think that's
unless
the
I know the
difference.
language.
That's the difference. Is
Unless
that
I know the language.
you look at a Michelangelo,
But
or,
he understands the language. That's what he just said.
But no,
Yeah.
when you see it, you immediately know, because that's a person. You know, like I know how I can see, and just by being there, realize, okay, the relationship between the the figures represented is such because of the way the artist has depicted them, right? There's a real message there. And when I look at abstract art, I just see like, well, if I don't ask the artist what this is supposed to mean, I will never know.
Well, if you don't know what he's intending,
Uh-huh.
you don't have some sense of his palette, and not just color palette, but his meaning palette, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could read, for instance, T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Let's go to poetry in this way.
Uh-huh.
This might be helpful because it's closer to words.
Okay, yeah.
Literature is sometimes helpful in this way before we switch back to the medium of paint. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. You might think, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. Poetry.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck he's talking about. Poetry is just not... Why doesn't he just write prose? Poetry is confusing. Ezra Pound, I don't get the cantos. Poetry's stupid. He should just come out and say what he means. And then you might think poetry is therefore dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And in that analogy... But no,
I see the analogy.
You have to figure out like what he's saying something, and he's saying it in a particular way because he thinks that's the best way. And when you spend time with poetry, like if you read The Wasteland over and over again, you realize like, there is really no better 5-page, 10-page discussion of Western nihilism and its rejection of Christianity, and it's this deep need for a God than these 5 fragmented stories, these people's lives. And you couldn't do that by just describing a commentary in The Wasteland. The poem itself has to express that.
Right.
But I had to kind of get used to his genre, you could say.
Okay.
With abstract art, switch of that is, well, Jackson Pollock, for instance, I don't like Jackson Pollock, right? Of course, I don't like a lot of poetry, but it might be my fault. I'm open to that. And Jackson Pollock, what is he trying to say? Well, if you actually I have to go to him and say, all right, what's up to here? Just give me a little hint, and then if you tell me the language, the kind of genre you're doing here, then I'll bet I could probably, now I'm kind of speaking your language. And his thing is the infinite space of canvas. So one of the things he said is not saying everything about everything, but he paints slapdashery because most painting is like, I have a frame, and then I have to do this art within that frame, and it's all very constricted and consigned. And he wants to say, if you look at this, they're big canvases, there's no edge to them, and in fact, there's no structure to how the colors work on them intentionally, because I want to express the limitless and the infinity of the universe in this capacity. I want to show, because we have such a hard time grasping boundarylessness to things, and this is the way I've expressed that. And you might say, not a great expression. I don't really get that. I'm also not interested in the limitless of the universe, where I'm interested in nihilism in Western culture or something. So I'm more keen to pick up on that particular thing than that.
Okay.
But it's similar to that. So it requires all art requires a little more, you could say, input. Like you have to put in a little more. Representations art's easy because it's just like shapes. But we all know that because of cameras, like art, when art's done well, it's doing something else, and it might require me to put in a little more. But the idea is you ought to get more bang for your buck. Just like if I did sit down and pay attention to poetry and learn a bit about rhyme and meter and pay attention to what the poets are doing, then actually I'd be able to read Ezra Pound's cantos and would be able to understand it. Now, what I don't like about art is many people fake it. The problem is many people say, oh my gosh, T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, just the greatest poem. Yeah, I mean, Jackson Pollock, what a beautiful piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say, what? Why? What makes that? And usually they're going to say something like, well, they're not going to say this, but it's going to sound like, well, people said it's good.
Right.
And it's like, who cares? Have you done the work?
The weirdo over there with the strange haircut, who seems to be the expert here, said he liked it.
I mean, you've all been an experience where you're sitting in front of an art gallery, and you're like, it's just incredible, the Mona Lisa. Now, Mona Lisa doesn't do much for me, But
it's very small.
You get in front of it and you think, and you're like, but you feel this compulsion to say, wow, just incredible.
It's sort of like being famous for being famous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, okay, so but I agree with you actually on this until I read Da Vinci's one of his
The Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
No. It's
love that.
Walter Isaac.
Oh yeah,
great
He's good on biographies.
Yeah, really good. And so he was talking about how actually Da Vinci, he would start out by this is why he was so into dissecting like human beings and understanding like how they function and like what muscles and how they move, and by moving this way your muscle actually twitches this way and understanding all these things. And so like what he would do though is he would start out by painting the inside of a person and go to the outside of the person, right?
Yeah.
So in the Mona Lisa, like he started out by like just painting the skin, and then her undergarments, and then her outer garment, and like just continued layer,
like you would layer,
like you would layer it up, and then so I would have, before I knew that, I would have looked at the Mona Lisa and be like, yeah, that looks like a girl kind of smiling, fine.
Like I wouldn't date her, but
right,
but
not that attractive.
No.
I thought Italians were attractive.
But then once I knew, okay, what was he doing? How was he doing it? How he came to this.
Well, here's the
then I had
question,
a much more appreciation for it.
But see, and that's why I want to push on this. Did you appreciate that for the craft? So in that you're appreciating like, wow, yeah, it turns out it doesn't look that hard, but he did a lot of work to do that, which is appreciating art as a craft. But I think that art is more. It has that. You have to be a great craftsman.
Yeah.
But what really matters to the art and what makes art distinct from craft is that it expresses some truth, some account, and that's something where you might have to know how did he go about proclaiming that? How did he go about ordering this and all this kind of stuff? Like for instance, Franz Klein is my favorite modern artist, and he has white canvases with black shapes and stuff, and it's important to realize that actually he uses just paint he bought at the hardware store. This black, it's a kind of, you could get a sense if you look at it, it's like this kind of matted black, and you think this is not. And his art, one of his art directors at one point like went in at night in his studio and replaced his black paint with painter's black paint. And he's an artist, so he realized right away this is not my paint, and went out to the hardware store and bought this. But it says he says I'm going to paint. It's an anti-elitist point he's trying to make. I'm going to paint with ordinary things because life has an ability to use the ordinary to say something profound in this way. Now you get a sense. Now you see they're like, yeah, that paint does look like ordinary paint or something. But I did have to ask him and know something about his craft. But the message is still not qua the craft of how he painted this way, but what he's saying by it. Yeah. So it's easy, but it's easy to confuse art with just figurative representation, with just craft because they're involved. They are involved.
And I am once again willing to own up someday that maybe I'm wrong, but. Like
someday.
Okay, paint, like
he says,
because right.
Qualifying someday. I might.
Think that there's value in putting out some artwork that's showing like the ordinary things of life.
Yeah.
However, I think it's just a cheap way to do it, and I don't mean that, no pun intended, that you're buying cheap paint, but like I think it would be more beautiful. It would be better art because I don't believe that. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I believe in an objective standard here, and I think it would be better art if you found a way to paint it.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, to where
I got you in this one.
Yes.
Let me
okay.
Let me give you an example on this. All
Good.
Right. So here, maybe this is the concern. It looks like a kid did this.
Yes, that it's. Okay, you might be this master artist, but that. Nobody can tell the difference between what you're doing, and I am not an artist. I can do almost everything well, except for I cannot draw or paint. Like, I am the worst. But I think I could do that.
Yeah. Now, the important part is it was with all things with Descartes. I think cogito. But let me make a quick music form of art, and I'll switch back to this. Jazz, for instance.
Yeah.
So it's classical music. You're following the notes. And jazz in the solo is the important part. And jazz is always offbeat, this sort of thing. And the solo is this made-up thing. You think anybody? I mean, what's so special about that? He's just kind of going off and doing his own thing. He's totally free. He's not actually being attentive to the music, sort of thing. Now
yes. Oh yeah. You have to follow the scales, and you have to.
Exactly. So I'm a jazz musician, and
you are
solo. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But clarinet and saxophone and Dixieland and jazz and soloing and being a jazz musician, it's harder than being classical because you have to understand the chord progressions. You have to know where you are in these things. And I'm good at soloing in key of G because it's easier for me to do. Whereas like when I see
only one flat.
Yeah, exactly. When I see three flats, I think it's one sharp if it's in treble. If I see three flats, something like A flat, I know I'm pants at this, so I'm going to stick to my kind of tried and true because I don't trust my ability to do this. And so while jazz, I think a lot of people think jazz is just making stuff up. It's like actually it's predicated on the fact that this guy already knows all the stuff in the background. He's going further. Now, claim with abstract art, and this is just a claim that you might make. It might be good if you could try it. Is that the artists who paint abstract art, Picasso, Klein, Still, Pollock, others, Warhol, they can do the other part. Like, the only reason that they can paint abstractly and it have any significance might just be because they actually understand all the skills in the other ones and have only gained the ability to improvise, to create, because of the knowing how to follow the rules. Just like a poet can make... Shakespeare makes license. He takes license sometimes in the English language at certain points grammatically, not because he made mistakes, but because he understands the language perfectly fine.
Right.
Like, Jackson Pollock, I have no doubt, can reproduce for you Van Gogh, Degas, Caravaggio to an extent. He's trained to do that. He could do that. He chooses not to, but somehow, and I don't know, and I'm not going to want to offend Jackson Pollock because I don't like him really that much, but some of these modern artists, Mondrian, for instance, they can do the other thing, but they're not doing it, and their ability to do what they do might be predicated upon their craftsman and skill and their ability to see the other one as it is.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
It's an interview. You're allowed to ask
2,000
questions.
years,
Yes.
we will still be talking about the works of Michelangelo, Caravaggio. Will anybody know, other than I think that there will be people who's like, okay, this painting is historically significant because it was the first one of its kind, okay?
Yep.
But will people know abstract artists? Like, will these paintings stand the test of time? Because I'm skeptical on whether or not
that's a good question.
they will.
I don't think. I mean, most paintings don't stand the test of time. So
Very true.
you only need a few of them to be in parity with the other ones for that to work. But
that's a fair point.
But for instance, let's put it this way: if we lost all of Caravaggio's works, I would feel that we'd be missing some human creation that expressed truth in a profound way. Whereas if we lost all of Clifford Still's works, most of them in the Clifford Still Museum in Denver, they're spread around but he's got a big collection there or something. If we lost all of my dad's favorites, Clifford Still, if we lost all of Clifford Still's works, would we have missed out on a fundamental experience of reality in Western civilization? I would say no. That's probably right. Now, so is the claim that abstract art therefore is not art and valuable because it's not eternal? Does it turn out that art has to have eternal value, or can it have a value in the time and speak at the time it's going, or is it?
I would say I wouldn't use the word eternal. I would say transcendental.
Transcendental. Does transcendental mean across all time and space? Can you get at? Let's put it this way: can an abstract modern art get at a truth that is transcendental, like infinity, like the unconscious, or something like structure and lack of structure from Mondrian or something? That seems to be the truth. Is it certainly harder for us to relate to? Is it more abstract? Yeah. Well, right.
Certainly.
But does that mean it's less? Does that mean it? Would it surprise me that it's not held longer time? No, probably not. It would be a shame if if some of it was gone. But I don't think it's as important as Caravaggio in that way. And partly because it's not trying to be that kind of. It's not trying to express that kind of thing. I mean, Caravaggio, like the Calling of St. Matthew, this is trying to express, a whole lot, right? Like man's discipleship, God's choice, election, the creation, and Adam. There's just a lot going on there,
yeah,
right?
It's a very rich painting.
Whereas, like, for instance, Mondrian is not. He's making one little simple thing, and you may think, just not a lot there.
I'm gonna
just
let
one
you guys
point.
Okay.
Just keep going.
Well, I don't have a whole lot else to say. You have not changed my mind, but I appreciate the defense.
Yeah.
I've never actually even met anybody who could make an argument. So you've given me things to think about. And I am sympathetic to the argument that abstract art is simply not trying to do the same thing that impressionist art or realism. What did you
Yeah, realistic art. would be
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah. That it's just simply not trying to be the same. I just get frustrated with the artists, I think, themselves, because to me, I think a lot of them are just charlatans.
Well,
and-
I don't like. Well,
And
it's
you
not
know what?
that
I'll probably spend time in purgatory someday for being so judgy.
Well, I think it's interesting though that you said like, some of these abstract artists
Yeah.
can do the things that some of these other masters have done, but
Yeah.
they just choose not to.
That's right.
To me, that there's a disorder there.
It bothers me.
like
What?
that bothers
It
me.
does
Yes,
bother
like
me.
so, but
Like,
because
why not make something
like because like
beautiful?
look like Michael like
Well, because
David
art isn't
like
about
the statue.
beautiful. Yeah.
You know the statue of David. Like look how amazing that is.
Why don't
Right,
we
and
make
so
another one of those?
like so you're telling me you can make
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
and but you choose
Why?
you choose not you choose
Well,
a
'cause
lesser good over a
Machines
higher
can
good.
do that.
But that's not what it.
Well, machines can do all the painting.
And
yeah, AI.
I mean,
with the artificial intelligence. I mean,
yeah, we'll see. Because I think part of art is not just about copying; it's about creating.
Yeah.
I think art.
Right.
I think a good part of art is bringing to something in a sense new that's never been there before.
yeah, so you could say the same thing about the sculpting. You know, a machine could do it, but
yeah.
it's just
Not for
copying.
the first time. Yeah.
It's not-
But
it's-
if
but
you're
it's
just
not
like,
creating.
You could do Michelangelo's David, and it's like, well, it's already been done. You know, there's no more. We could just have more versions of that.
do a different one.
I mean, point of the artist is to say is to try to express something new, not for new novelty's sake, but for the sake of telling some truth. Either we already know in a different way, in a new way, or telling us something we've forgotten, or telling something that we're not really
it's
attentive
like
to.
philosophy
Art,
in that way.
yeah, art is in the German tradition at least, the German idealist tradition art is the first level of what's known as like the realm of the spirit. It goes art, religion, and philosophy. These are all really ways of dealing with the spirit and not with the empirical world. And art's the weird transition one because it requires the empirical world. You can't have art without
It's like-
matter in some fashion.
Poetic knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they could do that. But it does. Yeah, abstract art requires you to put in a little more. And I think people just people cheat on this, and this is why I think it's bad, or why it's difficult and frustrating to me, is because it does require you actually to pay attention and think about what they're actually trying to do, what their genre is, what they're intending, and that's not always clear. It's not meant to be clear. It's meant to require this. But some of it's supposed to be absolutely clear, but some of it we're just not good at listening to. And then people would just say, "Oh, it's just great. Yeah, I just get it. It's totally great." It's like, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, it's not always clear, and sometimes it's not worth it. I mean,
That's a good question. Is it worth it? That's a good
I
question.
mean, there's lots of questions of like, is it? You could know lots of things, but is it worth it to know those things? Like,
Right.
Russian. It'd be great to read Dostoevsky, Brothers Karamazov in Russian. It'd be really great, right? My translation, I'm sure, is missing out because I know how translations work because I can read other languages.
Right.
Is it worth it for me to learn Russian to read Brothers Karamazov, even though it would be good? I think the answer is no. So you might say,
I think the answer is
man,
no.
I'll bet there's some really good stuff in this Rothko painting here that I could really spend a lot of time to get at. Is it worth it for me to learn this guy's language? Do I think the payoff's going to be there? And you might probably say, no, probably not.
Okay.
Okay.
But you might say, maybe. And you might be frustrated. It's like, you could have made it a little easier. Like, could you have written in, like, pig Russian? Some kind of, like, could you have at least, why don't you come to me?
Uh-huh.
Why don't you write in English anyway? And it's like, you stop it. Because he could only say some of the things he says in Russian.
Right.
David Foster Wallace has beautiful articles about this, how Dostoevsky says things in Russian like flying at. We translate it, it sounds silly, and it's like, he's always flying at you. Whereas in Russian, that's not a crazy phrase or something. So some things just don't translate well.
Right.
That might be the case that, like, Rothko just says, look, what I'm trying to say about the unconscious, for instance, I'll use that example again, just can't be said without these giant spaces, huge canvases, giant, deep, rich colors with their borders that draw you in and almost, like, pull out of you this other part that's there with you and that you now have to deal with. And I can't do that without doing this. Like, Caravaggio can't do it. He's trying to say something else. I'm trying to say this. If you don't give a rip about the unconscious and about human psychology on this deep level, okay, you shouldn't be reading my stuff or looking at my paintings.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think that might be important, you're like, hey,
Okay.
That's actually pretty neat.
That's fair. That's
I
fair.
still don't like it.
Hey, that's the thing. I mean, beauty is not in the eye of the beholder, and the judgment of taste is not arbitrary.
Yeah.
But there's something about art where like and pleasure has something to do with it, and when that is
Certainly.
involved, then
You can
there's-
appreciate different art forms. And
Yeah.
and there are other art forms that I give more credit to that I also don't appreciate.
Well, I suppose it's not unlike taste in the sense of the gustatory taste in like food, right? You could say like there are things that everyone ought to appreciate. Like if you do not like a good hamburger, and not European hamburger, I had most recently, but American, like real good
Like a
hamburger,
real
cheeseburger,
one. Yeah.
real beef. I mean, I think there's something deficient with you probably if you really don't like this.
Yeah.
Right, unless you have some particular reason for that.
Or like
Chemicals,
ballet. Okay, so like I just don't particularly enjoy ballet. I'm sure that if I got into it more and invested, like learned Russian to go with your analogy, I could really appreciate some of the ballets. And I'm fine without it.
Yeah. Once your daughter wants to do it, then we'll see.
We do Irish dance.
Okay.
Which
Yeah, and some people are like, what's the jumping up and down and nonsense? I just don't. Is it athletics? Why don't you just go running?
Well,
You're like, no,
there's-
it's got this.
there's Catholic history behind it, actually. But
Well, it's Catholic history behind a lot of stuff.
another podcast. for
Andy
another-
Warhol was a parishioner at our church in Saint Vincent Ferrer. And there's a little you can find out where you can
Oh,
see
cool.
where he's sitting pointed out there. So he was always
No, cool.
in the church there. Yeah, his paintings do nothing for me. Pop art I'd have a tough time with. Pop art is trying to say too much.
I don't know what pop art is.
So like you've seen Andy Warhol's Campbell soup cans.
Yeah.
This kind of thing, or like Marilyn Monroe and 5 different things or whatever. It's just multicolored. It's just kind of like silk screening stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's trying to say something. That's a meta art kind of pop art. You're trying to say something about what art is as opposed to art itself. And that's a different kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't. That's like and I'm a philosopher, so when you get too meta on me, you must be. I get it. I know
what,
it's
though?
trying to say something, but I'm just not interested.
I wish all those artists who like are able to make it and they make tons of money. It's like, you know what? Good on you, man. I'm really happy that you were so successful. I still don't like your stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. It's
Yeah,
fair.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
great. It's great for them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I also think like abstract art is kind of like mathematics, in that it's
Really?
there's something cool about it. but the thing is, you all know someone.
seems to be the opposite.
You all know someone. Well, it's pure form. This idea of abstract stuff. So it's trying to formalize as much as possible. And everyone knows someone who's just like pure mathematician or something. I'm sure there are good people out there, but like pure math is not the place you're supposed to live. That's the realm of angels.
Yeah.
For us, we need human flesh and kind of emotions and all of this. And some of the abstract art, it's trying to send a sort of super abstract formalist message, and that's cool. But we're also embodied again. And that's why the more realist, you could say, even though it turns out that the representationalism is not the only thing they're doing, more the most important thing, it's still the right vehicle to convey for us poor mortals. That in some ways abstract artists are trying to do art for mathematicians or angels, and that's why it's not actually interesting to us, and probably ought not to be.
Here's what needs to happen. Somebody from the Washington, D.C. area needs to have Adam and I come and give a talk to their parish.
Yeah.
So that you can take us to one of the museums in the area.
Love it.
And then we can sit before one of these things and
Discuss.
yes.
Richard Volheim said
I would love to do that.
I loved it. Richard Volheim said he said looking at good painting takes about 2.5 hours, because the first hour you just have to clear the distractions in the mind to be able to attentive to actually hear and try to see what this painter is trying to do. And the next hour and a half you have a shot at getting what he's saying.
It's like prayer.
So, but I have
Longer discussion.
I have one other question
Yeah.
for you. Would you say that abstract art is a lower form of art or a higher form of art? Is that even a fair
it's-
question? Is that an unfair
I
question?
don't know. Would I don't know. Is it's like poetry and
See, I think poetry is a higher form
of the
than
language
prose.
and prose, but like different.
Because you
could have. I guess we're comparing between
Prose, you're simply saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
Poetry, you're saying what you're saying
Yeah.
and more things at the same
I guess the
time.
analogy would be: is T.S. Eliot a higher form of poetry than William Carlos Williams' or something, like a different kind of poetry. And you might think, yeah, and what's the standard? Well, complexity of the language. And like, well, but if actually you get a lot more through the pure simplicity of the Red Red Wheelbarrow or something, than the T.S. Eliot's like, long strings of super whatever, then it's hard to compare. So it depends what the higher form. If the point is craft and technique, you might say actually it's a lower form because it doesn't require like Vermeer or something.
Certainly, yeah.
But if you say like expression, like getting more punchy right to it or something and the significance of it, you might think actually some of them might be a higher form because they're more concentrated in expression. If art is about expression and not just representation, but then again, it's nice to have both. Again, I think Caravaggio is a beautiful example of someone who a picture wouldn't do what that does. Paint of that thing. There's motion and there's movement in it in the way it's structured because it's a human creation. This is one of those things that photography, we shouldn't be surprised at this, it has no agency. You chose to pick it, but everything there was just registered unconsciously.
Yeah.
Whereas in painting, it always has this element of creativity because you're always recreating in a sense according to how you see it. And we don't always see things as they just are, but either what they ought to be, what they intend to be, what they want to be. It's so complex, our perceptual capacities as opposed to like photographic registration. So that brings into, well, but Caravaggio's his brilliance on that is able to bring not only craftsmanship but the three-dimensional and all that kind of stuff, but he can embed all of that.
And what I love about Caravaggio and a lot of his contemporaries, and just like you go to Rome, walk in any church, it's just packed with all of this gorgeous, gorgeous art.
Yeah.
Every single thing, like, the way his finger is pointed, who's higher in the picture, what's in the background, every part of every character's body is significant of something. And to me, like when I look at that and think about the level of message, like this picture conveys
dense.
Conveys
a world.
And then
it's world
and so then I think when I go and thinking about abstract art, it's like kind of
compared to it. It's not. It's we'll say this way.
You know what I mean?
It's like going to abstract art in the meal sense could be like going and getting I don't know, like a salad or something. It's one thing. You go to this place. Hey, I'm going to an ice cream shop and I get an ice cream or something. Whereas Caravaggio might think is like a banquet. It's like this is a full course meal. I've got the little things, and I've got the main course, and I've got dessert, and I've got all the different flavors, right? Whereas abstract art is intending, as far as I see, it's not trying to do the multiple flavors, like a nice scotch or a whiskey, or something, different layers, like, ooh, the nice finish, this sort of thing, right? It's trying to go for I'm trying to say one thing pure.
Okay.
It's that kind of formal math, again, that kind of, and if we judge it on, well, you could say more, I like more things, but no, it's trying to do this one thing, and look at that, and, yeah, and so we say, is it a higher form? Not in terms of the banquet style thing, but is there a sort of purity to it that gets this thing? Perhaps that, yeah.
Okay.
And that couldn't be. I've never looked at a Caravaggio and had the sense of the kind of deep unconscious the things about me that I try to hide from or don't want to acknowledge is a way that I do when I sit in front of a Rothko.
See, I didn't even know that was supposed to happen.
Have you ever sat in front of Rothko for 45 minutes?
No. Oh gosh, no.
But that does you have to if you're gonna
so that's why I said
that's where we're coming.
Somebody from the Washington D.C. area needs to have Adam and I come and give a talk.
Yeah,
we give talks, and then we'll go to the art gallery.
It's great.
And we'll hang out.
Yeah,
in silence, looking at a picture.
Yeah, we'll talk afterwards over brews.
That's awesome. A great idea.
Let's do it.
From your lips to God's ears.
Father Bonaventure, it's been a blast. Thanks so much for hanging out.
It's so great
yes,
to hang out
absolutely.
With you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Oof. That was good. I appreciate you taking my hard feedback.
No, I love it. It's fair enough. I mean,
especially there at the end when it's like, all right, I think I can get down with abstract art. Just trying to be what it.
I mean, remember, my favorite art is American Impressionism. So John Singer Sargent, Robert Henry,
Uh-huh.
William Glackens, which is a combination to me, or even Andrew Wyeth, is the combination of it's moving away from the pure representationalism to the expression.